welcome.
Hi.
Welcome to college. It's really nice to meet you.
Yeah, very good to see you.
So in usual times, of course, we would have loved to have had you into the college to have a look around and meet you in person, but we are delighted that you've joined us today for a Zoom call. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to be there with you. I'm sorry I can't be. Perhaps another time when we're the other side of Christmas and things relax a bit, I can come and have a look around and meet you in person.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we've got a class here of our level 3 second year aviation operations students. We also have some other people on the call today. Just to mention, we've got Marcella is on the call, who is obviously, as you all know, the Group Head of Education, Skills and Employment. We've got Will Allenson on the call, who is our Deputy Principal. We've got Wendy Martin, the Head of Stansted College, and we've got Ruth Gray, the Assistant Academy Manager. So there's a few people in the wings listening to our chat today. So that's great. The more people involved, the better. So we've already watched the Manchester Airport Group video that you kindly sent to us just a few moments ago. We're ready to hand over and hear some more from you.
Okay, thanks. Shall I share my screen? I'm going to talk a little bit about the group, a bit about how it's structured. Can you see that now?
Yep.
Has that come up? It should say business update.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, you can see it. Good. Okay, I was going to talk a bit about the group, a little bit about my role and what I do. A bit of a depressing bit about the impact that coronavirus has had on the business and on aviation in general over the last 9 or 10 months, but also try and look a bit longer term for some signs of green shoots and sort of positive recovery, and talk a little bit about what we've got planned for Stansted in the long term, which is a much more positive way to end. So I'll talk for about 15 minutes, I would think 15-20 minutes, and then we'll open up to questions. I'd rather deal with it that way than talk for ages, so I'll crack on. So if this is working, I need to move the slide along. Has that now changed organisation structure, I'm hoping?
Yes.
Yep, great, it's working. This is the boring bit, but it explains what I do within the organisation. So I did want to give you a bit of a sight of what my job involves. But to do that, it's important to sort of see where I sit within the wider organisation and what other people do. So it explains what I do. And what you can see from here is how the group is structured. And it starts with what I've labelled as the MAG board, which is where the governance of the company sits. So we have a chairman who controls that board. We have shareholders on that board who are the Manchester councils, the 10 councils that make up Greater Manchester, and another shareholder called IFM Investors, who hold pension fund money and have invested some of that in MAG as a group. And that board provides the governance over the whole company. It sets its strategic direction. And our group chief executive, Charlie Cornish, is responsible to that board for the group's performance and the management of the company. And I work for Charlie. You can see me labelled there on the left-hand side in the red box as a chief of staff, which is a rather sort of catch-all term for a lot of the things that I do. And I work alongside an executive committee, we're called. So alongside me is a chief development officer who works with airlines and with retailers and other sort of partners to develop our revenue. We have a chief financial officer who does the counting and the accounting of the business. We have a chief operations officer who is responsible for all of the operations across our airports, so the customer service, the safety, the security, the sort of airside management, all aspects of the operation sit under him. And we have a managing directors at Stansted, Manchester and East Midlands, and some of you might know of Steve Griffiths at Stansted, who is the managing director there, and he is responsible to the chief operations officer for everything that goes on at Stansted. We have a general counsel who leads all of our legal work, and we have a chief information officer who is principally responsible for all IT issues across the company, any of our systems, our IT systems, and managing those across the group. What I do is I suppose a clutch of different things. I'm responsible for the group's output in the media. So if we're talking to newspapers or TV or radio about anything to do across the group, that sits under me. And the same goes for government. If we're talking to any politicians, any government ministers or civil servants, I'd be responsible for that as well. CSR is the corporate social responsibility aspects of what we do as a group. I'm responsible for that, and health and safety across the company. Asset planning, which is all of our long-term work to look at where we need to develop new assets to support growth, and also responsible for capital delivery. So when we get to actually building those assets, that sits under me, or it does just of the last couple of months actually. So that's where I sit in the organisation, and that's roughly what I do. And the group itself, you would have seen the video, is made up of those three airports: Manchester, East Midlands and Stansted. They're not the biggest airports in the UK. Manchester's the third biggest passenger airport in the UK, and Stansted's the fourth biggest. East Midlands is the biggest freight airport in the UK in terms of handling freight flights, so those that are dedicated to handling freight. Heathrow is the biggest freight airport in terms of the freight that goes in the belly of passenger aircraft and flies around the world, but East Midlands in terms of dedicated freight flights is the biggest. And this gives you a kind of sense of the scale of those airports. 29 million passengers at Manchester in 2019, 28 million passengers at Stansted. And with that comes lots of economic benefits, with that lots of employment, and not just the employment that we have on site, but actually the employment that's supported right across the regions in the supply chain. So people who make things or services to the airport, the amount of employment that supports in a wider area is huge. And we would think of these assets as strategic assets for the UK. They play an important role in connecting the UK consumers and businesses to international markets and destinations. And in that respect, they play an important strategic role. So at Stansted, to sort of focus down a little bit on that, the sort of top markets that we've got at Stansted are heavily focused in Europe. Most of our traffic, probably 90% of our traffic, is to European destinations. And you can see there the key ones in Spain, Italy, Germany, Poland. And then you've got UK domestic, which are sort of flights to other places in the UK. So quite a broad spread there of European destinations. Some long-haul traffic has been growing at Stansted over the last few years, particularly through the Emirates service to Dubai. It doesn't make our top sort of 10 list of destinations there, but it is becoming an increasingly important market. There's some traffic to the US, and that is one of the things that we're particularly aiming to grow over the years ahead. What you can see on the right-hand side is heavily dominated by Ryanair. So Ryanair has 3 out of 4 passengers at Stansted travel with Ryanair. Got EasyJet and Jet2 came to the airport a couple of years ago. Really important sort of new entrant for us. Provides a really good service to passengers, predominantly leisure, along with the other airlines. But Ryanair is our key customer. Most of you, I'm sure, will be very familiar with Ryanair. They are a really good customer for us. They're a really strong airline. They're exceptionally well managed in terms of their efficiency and their operation. That gives them a really strong competitive position in the market because they're so well run and they're so efficient. They can offer very low prices to consumers. And that means that they often compete other airlines out of the market, and other airlines find it difficult to operate in markets where Ryanair operates because they are capable of offering a more competitive position. And we've got a long-term agreement with Ryanair and some of our other carriers for growth. So we support them and we provide long-term commercial deals or discounts which encourage them to grow at the airport over a period of time. And that's been working really well since MAG bought Stansted back in 2013. We've developed that kind of approach with a range of airlines, and offering them discounts and encouraging growth has served us very well. So that was the position in 2019. Some really strong markets, a very strong network across Europe, some great relationships with our airlines, particularly Ryanair, in terms of driving growth. But as you well know, 2020 has been a really difficult year and a very different story for the airport. So I'll just spend a few minutes sort of talking through what that looks like for us at the moment. What you can see here is a sort of depiction of the daily passenger numbers in 2019 and 2020, and this is the total picture across the group, so the three airports combined. And the grey line at the top shows you how passenger numbers each day went up and down through 2019, and then the dark line at the bottom shows you what kind of year we've had in 2020, which has been pretty shocking. It started off normal, and you can see in January, February and March that things were pretty much the same as they were the year before. But then as the UK went into lockdown and countries across Europe went into lockdown, you can see the daily number of passengers falling off a cliff really down to almost zero for the months between April, June, and then coming back slowly in July. And at that point, the government started introducing travel corridors, so it was possible to travel to different European markets without having to quarantine and without having to isolate when you came back. And that gradually led to, as you can see, a steady recovery up to about 20% of our normal traffic level. So 50,000 passengers a day across the group, which compares to on most busy days across the summer at Stansted, we'd see 100,000 passengers at Stansted and 100,000 passengers at Manchester. So you can see that it's been a very, very difficult summer. Airlines have not had the capacity that they would normally have, and passengers haven't been either able to travel or wanted to travel. So we've had a very, very difficult year. And as the summer's gone on, you can see that dark blue line sliding further as we go back towards November, as the market has effectively shut down with more quarantine arrangements. And then now we're into November, we've got the current lockdown and travel restrictions, which mean that air travel is banned except for business, education, or sort of family emergencies. So we're in a position where our traffic numbers are back down close to zero. So that's not a great place for a business like ours, and each month has been a slightly different story over the summer. And at Stansted, you can see here in July 2019, we handled nearly 3 million passengers, as we did in August and September. But during this summer, those numbers have been much, much lower. We probably got to nearly about a third of our normal traffic level at Stansted in August. That was about as good as things got this summer. And when so many jobs and so much employment relies on the amount of passengers that we have, the types of jobs that we've got at the airport depend on that kind of demand. And if we haven't got that demand, then there isn't the need for that kind of work. So a lot of people at the airport have been using the government's furlough scheme, which means that they're not coming into work, but the government is paying a high proportion of their salary, which means that people have still got an income during this period. So we haven't seen people go out of work in significant numbers through the course of this year, and the government has stepped in and provided that important support to employment. This picture just shows you how the markets that we've got at Stansted have gradually closed down over the summer. So if you imagine the passengers that we had in 2019 all turning up on one day, in the early part of the summer, about 87% of those people could have travelled to their destination and come back without having to do that 14 days of quarantine. But as the summer's gone on and the government has had to shut down those markets and impose restrictions on them, that number has gradually shrunk, down to probably around about a third now. So a really, really difficult market for it this year. One thing I thought it would be interesting just to show you is on the cargo and freight side, how that side of the business has been performing, because with the restrictions and the drop in traffic, it's meant that a lot of the freight capacity that the UK normally has, which goes in long-haul aircraft, largely from Heathrow, where the cargo travels underneath the passenger decks, those flights haven't operated. And because those flights haven't operated, but goods and services are still traveling around the world, it's meant that they've had to find other ways of connecting those things. So what we've seen is quite a strong uptick in cargo tonnage at Stansted. It's about a 20% increase during the course of this year compared to 2019. And that's been reflected at East Midlands as well, which has that really strong cargo operation. And what you can see at Manchester is really what I've been talking about. So Manchester has a broader range of long-haul flights and a bigger long-haul network. So the cargo that it normally handles, it's not that significant in the normal course of things, but you can see it really dropping off because those flights simply haven't operated this year. So that cargo, if you like, has turned up at Stansted in East Midlands and has flown on aircraft that operate in a dedicated way. So they don't have passengers on them; they are just full of cargo. So that's quite an interesting picture. You see how things have changed and the extent to which we've benefited to some degree from the travel restrictions that have been put in place. But it's been a small comfort given what's been happening in the passenger market. So looking ahead to next year, it's very difficult at the moment. We've got a huge range of uncertainties, both in terms of the health situation and how the virus will come under control and how quickly the government can do that, how quickly the vaccine will be available and can be distributed and people can be inoculated across the UK and across Europe. That's another uncertainty. I think the effect of COVID-19 on the economy generally and people's incomes, disposable incomes, on employment and unemployment, these are all factors that in normal years would be quite stable and would be reasonably easy to forecast. But because there are so many of those factors and they're all combining to make a very uncertain outcome, we've had to look in the way that we plan the business at 3 different scenarios. A high case, which is the most optimistic, is that we see a vaccine developed in 2020, which we have. But the key thing is how quickly that's then distributed across the UK. And in our high case, we assume that it's distributed quickly and actually life returns to normal in the first half of 2021, and people can get back to their normal activities. They can go on holiday, they can travel for business, and things just settle down. And in that case, we would see quite a strong recovery in demand next year, and that is our most optimistic case. The other thing we're doing is looking at what we call a central case, which is that it takes a slightly longer to develop and distribute the vaccine, and that we continue to have some of the travel restrictions that we have at the moment through next year, but that passenger testing enables people to travel to countries and come back, and after a short period of isolation take a test before they can get back on with their daily lives. That would see a modest recovery, sort of a steady recovery next year, probably back to 50–60% of our normal traffic levels, which would be a good outcome, but clearly not as good as it would be in the high case. And the low case is a bit more like a continuation of this year, and that would put the business under real pressure. To see such low traffic volumes again next year would be something that would be very difficult for the business to get through. We would get through it, but if we only see 20% or 30% of traffic volumes next year, then that's not going to be a good outcome at all. So we're working really hard with government to try and get a travel regime that will encourage people to travel next summer and through 2021. This testing regime that I've talked about, that we have travel corridors reintroduced, and that we get a strong recovery, or as strong as we can get. I mean, I think there is some hope that we might get the high case, but I think it's certainly not our central set of assumptions at the moment. So reasons to be positive. It's very, very challenging at the moment in the business. It's unlike any other time I've known in the 30 years I've worked in aviation. Never seen anything like this. I was around when there was that volcano that erupted in Iceland and all flights were grounded for a week. And we thought that was extraordinary when it happened. But this has felt like that pretty much for the whole of 2020. I never thought I would see anything like we've seen. But history tells you to be positive and to be optimistic and to be confident that air travel will return to the levels that we saw before. And what you can see on this chart is stretching all the way back to 1950, the total number of passengers flying from UK airports over that 70-year period. And you can see there are a few blips, a few dips, and then the biggest one you can see is the one in 2008 and 2009, where air travel saw a big dip because of the economic recession. But you can see with a bit of a time delay, growth came back and traffic has grown back above the level that it was in 2008 and is now quite substantially above, or in 2019 was substantially above where it was. And the picture on the right, you can see Stansted, and Stansted grew very quickly, as you can see, from the early 90s through to about 2008, and then saw, sort of in line with what went on in the wider UK, a big dip in traffic for about 5 years. And it took then quite a period of time to get that traffic back up above the previous level, but it did get there, and Stansted's grown really successfully over the period since 2013, as you can see on the chart. And we're confident that we'll get back there. We'll get back there probably over the next 3 to 4 years. It will take time, and we'll have to bring passengers back and make people confident about air travel again. We'll have to bring airlines back and compete for traffic with other airports. And that will take some time, but it won't take that long. And we think that we'll get back to that position, as I say, within a few years. And we'll be supporting investment again, and we'll be supporting jobs again, and growing that employment across the region and creating those networks for people to travel. So we're really positive about the future. We've got to get through this short term. We will get through it, and we'll come through it quite successfully, and the airport will grow beyond that. Up to, we think that the airport today, or in 2019, it was handling around 27 million passengers. We think the airport can grow with its single runway all the way up to around 43 million passengers. We think it can do that over the next 10 or 15 years. And to support that, we would be putting in place investment, building assets alongside the current terminal, expanding the arrivals and the departures capability of the airport with what we call the Stansted Transformation Programme, which would be around £500 million worth of investment over that period. So there is a really bright future for Stansted. It's just not there right now, but it will come back, we think, quite quickly in the next couple of years. I thought it'd be fun just to show you a couple of interesting visitors to Stansted that you may or may not know about. The first one on the left, President Obama, who visited the airport back in 2011 and several times after that. He used Stansted as his preferred airport of choice when he visited the UK. Couple of reasons for that is that it's quick and easy to get into London. We've got the facilities and space on the north side where you are to handle that kind of operation. And when the president turns up, it's not just him and his wife. It's about 150 members of the kind of special forces, the logistics, the cars, the helicopters, the other support aircraft. It's a major operation, and I'm not sure whether President Trump has been in any time recently, but when they arrive in real force, and it's something to behold. And I was there when he arrived at Stansted at that time. It was just quite extraordinary to see all of the operation take place. I did hear the funny story about the motorway services, that all of the people travelling with the president had been unable to visit any shops while they were in the UK. And when the president came back to Stansted after he visited the Queen and the Prime Minister and had done all of his sort of state duties, all of the security guards went to the motorway services station on the M11, and they absolutely cleared out the place. They built virtually everything in the shop because they hadn't had an opportunity to go to any shops in London. And on the right hand side, I wasn't around for this, but in terms of a passenger, you can see there the passenger on top of a modified 747, which is the space shuttle. And that is not far away from, I think, from where you're sitting probably right now. That plane landed and then was at Stansted, I think, for some time before it took off again. But I thought that was quite an interesting passenger for you to see at Stansted. So that's what I was going to say. I know there are some questions that you guys wanted to ask me, so I'll sort of open it up to the floor and look forward to your questions.
Could you just screen share for us, Tim, please?
Yep.
Lovely. That was fantastic. Yep. Thank you very, very. Right. Yes, we have got a few questions for you. Jodie's got the first one. Jodie's got quite a long question, so bear with her.
Yeah, it's quite long. How did you get to where you are now?
Oh, okay. Well, over quite a long period, I've only ever worked in aviation. When I left school when I was 18, I joined what was called the British Airports Authority, and British Airports Authority at that time ran 7 airports in the UK, including Stansted, Heathrow, Gatwick and Southampton, and 3 Scottish airports, Edinburgh, Glasgow and Aberdeen. It was a big group that had been set up by government to run all of those airports, and I joined that from school before I went to university. And I started off in their sort of research team, doing market research and operational research. So going out into the terminal, counting people, asking people questions about what they thought about the service, sitting and doing surveys and all sorts of different things. And while I was at university, I kept going back and doing summer jobs with BAA. And then when I left university, I joined them and started sort of working my way through the company. I'd done economics at university. So I was really interested in sort of anything that related to economics. And I worked in their policy team and did a lot of work with government to try and build government policy to support the growth of aviation across all of the airports that we ran. And there's a function within government that regulates airports, and that was quite a prominent thing in my career. I did quite a lot of what's called economic regulation, where the regulators set the prices that airports can charge. And at that time, that was for quite a few different airports. And we spent a long time negotiating with the regulators about charges at our airports. I spent quite a bit of time doing that, and then onwards, and eventually I was at Stansted between 2000 and about 2007, working on a project there, a development project, and then I came back in 2011 and I was leading the regulation work then and planning. And then MAG bought Stansted in 2013, and I joined MAG and became what was called at that time the Corporate Affairs Director, so leading all of our work with government and with the media. and gradually since 2013, I've sort of built a portfolio of different activities across the group, including CSR and the other things that I had on that first slide. And it's gradually sort of a question of broadening out the things that you do, in some cases into areas that you've not got sort of strong expertise or any strong experience, but companies value people who can take what they do and sort of build on that, not just in terms of becoming experts, but becoming broader and building a sort of broader skills base and experience base. So that's what I've done. As I say, I've always worked in aviation for, it's now 30 years that I've been doing that. But I've always tried to do things slightly adjacent to what I'm doing and sort of broaden myself out. And that sort of helped me in my career build a bigger base of things that I can do and contribute with. That was quite a long answer to quite a short question, but did that give you some sense of how I've sort of charted my way through aviation? I
think we'd love to know what you studied along the way, if you could help us.
Yeah, as I said, when I went to university, I went to Durham University and I did economics, and that gave me a good grounding in I suppose financial issues, economic issues, and sort of helped me with my career along the way. I wouldn't say that I use it very much every day anymore. And after I'd been working with BAA for about 6 or 7 years, they sponsored me through a master's degree at the London Business School. So I did a finance qualification there, which teaches you all about corporate finance, about how companies raise money, how companies are bought and sold, how to appraise investment projects, all sorts of issues like that. So those are the two main sort of bits of education and sort of training that I've had during that time.
Great, thank you. I think Holly had a question next. Do you, Holly?
Yeah, when COVID is over, are there any future plans for long haul flights at Stansted?
Very much so. That? Yeah, I did, yes. About long haul at Stansted. And Stansted has really developed as a very strong European airport. So it's got a very broad range of destinations. I think it's probably got the best European network of any airport in the UK. And that's been driven by what Ryanair have wanted to do and the way they've developed at Stansted. As I say, they're a very strong competitor. They can offer routes to places that other airlines can't really make work. So they have taken the airport to become what it is, which is a very strong European airport. Alongside that, we have been working hard. We've got teams of people who go out around the world trying to sell Stansted as a long-haul destination for the UK and for London, and trying to show that Stansted's got capacity to support more flights in a way that Heathrow and Gatwick don't. Heathrow and Gatwick are largely full now, or they will be. I keep saying this. They will be when traffic comes back. They operate at full capacity normally. So airlines struggle to get into those airports to serve the market. So we're trying to demonstrate to airlines all the time that Stansted offers a really strong local catchment and regional catchment, but it also provides a good place to serve the London market from. And we've had some success with that. Probably the most prominent one is Emirates, who hopefully you'll have seen at the airport in better times. They introduced a service. They've been taken that to a double daily service, and they have grown strongly at the airport in the last couple of years, which we're very proud of. It's something that we targeted, and other long haul growth is what we're after. There's been a number of other services to Amritsar, and there's another place in India. I'm trying to think off the top of my head where it is. We've got long haul flights to the US. That's another thing that we want to return to. And I think the signs of that are positive. I just saw an announcement yesterday that an airline called JetBlue, which is a major US carrier that operates within the US, doesn't operate outside the US, is intending to, or has at least got plans for, a US service from Stansted in the next couple of years. It's announced those plans just yesterday, actually. And we think that network will continue to grow over the next couple of years. So yeah, very much. We probably do more than any other airport in the UK or airport group in the UK to get out and about around the world to sell what we've got.
Great, thank you very much. Grace?
What are MAG's recruitment plans for 5 years?
The recruitment plans over the next 5 years, we are going through what, as I've said, a very difficult period at the moment in terms of employment at the airport. We put very simply, we just don't have the traffic at the moment to support the number of jobs that we have. And a few weeks ago, we had to regretfully announce plans and consultation with our unions about losing some of those jobs at Manchester and at Stansted and some at East Midlands as well. And that we think is a temporary thing, that we have to downscale the amount of people that we employ because we don't have the traffic or the revenues to support their employment at the moment, or probably through next year. So we've had to downscale that to some degree, but we are looking ahead to next year, and we are looking at the recovery and the recovery that comes beyond that over the next 3 to 4 years. And as we get back to previous traffic levels, we will need the same level of employment that we had before. So we will be recruiting back those people when we get back to those traffic levels. And as we grow beyond that, we would expect the airport to grow its employment base as it grows, as I say, between where it is now and the future, which was, you know, from 27 million in 2019 up to 43 million over the next decade. You will see quite strong employment growth going with that, not just in terms of the people that the airport management company, who we are, employed, but also all the other airport related activities and aviation activities at the airport, and then the companies beyond that that support that activity at the airport. So that scale will grow and the employment will grow. So I think there are some really strong times ahead.
Great, lovely, thanks very much. Tom? Either one of yours? Tom's got a list.
What are Stanssted's predictions for post-Brexit in terms of pricing and freedom of movement?
It's a good question, Tom. Our predictions, it's something that we've been tracking for since the referendum in 2016. And at times we've been very concerned that the government would end up with no deal at all with the European Union. And the European Union, and being part of the European Union, has given the UK free access to all of the European markets that we serve, and airlines from any country can serve any market, at any frequency, at any price. And that might not sound sort of that unusual to you, but back in the 1980s and the 1970s, governments used to set or control every aspect of aviation. They used to control which airlines could fly which routes. They used to control the prices that those airlines charged on those services. They dictated the frequency of those services every week. All sorts of aspects of aviation that governments have stepped back from over the last 30 years. And we were concerned that the UK would lose access to that with Brexit. I think because it's so important, both the UK government and European governments have recognised the need to continue with a similar sort of framework to underpin travel in the future. So there has been a reciprocal agreement that whatever happens with fisheries and with state aid and other aspects of the discussions that are going on now, we are pretty confident that that underlying framework will remain to enable airlines to compete, to offer new services where they want to, and that it won't significantly disrupt the markets that we have at the moment. But I have to say, at one point, it was the thing that we were really worried about. But aircraft would be grounded as a result of Brexit because there was no agreement in place to allow them to fly to, France or Spain or Italy. And within the negotiations that the UK government was doing with the EU, that did seem to become quite an issue at one point. But as I say, we've got to a reciprocal agreement now that those services can continue. Is that what you had in mind, Tom?
Thank you.
And we're conscious of the time, Tim, so we'll have one final question, if that's okay, from Tricia.
Yeah.
What are your 3 top tips for us to achieve our aspirations?
So can you repeat that? I didn't quite catch it.
Yeah, what are your 3 top tips for us?
Your 3 top tips.
Yeah, I got it the second time, thanks. I think I've probably spoken about one of them, which is to look at ways of not just becoming a true expert in one thing, but actually look at ways of broadening out what you do. So sort of push the boundaries of your experience and your education, and be curious about, what's going on next door, if you like, and get involved in that. That will help you broaden out what you do, because there are some roles within businesses for real specialists and real experts, but actually companies like people that can do lots of different things, and that will give you a stronger offer as you go through your careers in aviation, because there are so many different ways. Aviation is such a big industry and so many different dimensions to aviation. It's what's kept me really interested in it, because it sounds, could sound really dull, 30 years in aviation, but actually I've done so many different things, and that's helped me sort of broaden out my offer. And that also gives you, I think, different options as well, because if you go very specialist very early, it puts you on a path where you're very committed to that. But if you keep some options open and you have a wide range of things that you can do, it gives you choice to do different things and explore different things. So I would give you that advice, because it's sort of worked with me. I think your education is a really strong foundation to all of that it gives you confidence that you know what you're talking about and your abilities, and that you've got those things behind you. So I really would recommend you pursue that and you put all your efforts into it. And for now, it's the best place for you to be. As the industry is going through a really tough time. If you're working in it now, then it's very hard work. I think the fact that you're studying and preparing yourself for the recovery, and you can sort of join the recovery on the upswing, there will be lots of opportunities for you that are created as the industry grows back in a new way, and with new routes, with new opportunities, new airlines at Stansted, we would hope. Then I think that the future is really, really positive for you.
Fantastic.
Is that okay?
That's really. Yes, yeah. I think, has anybody else got any questions from either side? Got any questions for us, Tim, or anything anybody else wants to ask?
What's the weather like down there today? It's miserable in Manchester. I'm in Manchester today, and it's pretty miserable.
Yeah, a bit sunny here. It's a little bit sunny. We've got a lovely view of the runway in this classroom.
And how is the teaching environment with the restrictions that you've got? Is it working for you?
Yeah, it's okay. No, I think we've got used to it. I think we've got used to the way that things are, and it was perhaps tricky to start with, but now we've all got used to how we work and all the regulations and wearing our masks when we're in communal areas and that kind of thing. We're all right. Yeah, come with it.
Well, I'd love to come and see you soon. If we can, if we're permitted to do it after Christmas, that would be really good to come and see you.
Oh, I think Will wants to say something.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
But yes.
It's Will Allen. Thank you, Mel. So sorry. Hi, Tim. It's Will Allenson here. I'm deputy principal for both Harlow and Stansted Airport colleges. So
hi, Will.
I found your talk really interesting, and it was particularly interesting to me. I was heavily involved with both Stansted and Manchester colleagues when we were setting the college up. So seeing your slide at the beginning with the structure was really interesting. So
Mm.
I had a number of questions, but thankfully all of our students asked the right questions, which is great
Good.
to know they're on the right line. So I just wanted to just say really that thank you for taking the time to talk to us. It was really interesting. I'm sure it's really, really useful for our learners, particularly at a difficult time. So yeah, just thanks very much for your time. Really
Well,
appreciate it.
if I can help provide any other people to come and speak to you, if there's particular topics that interest you, I can find the right people in MAG to come and spend some time with you. I know we've got a good volunteering culture, so I know people would be very happy to give their time to come and.
That's fantastic, and I'm sure Mel's making notes of that right now.
You've got it on record as
Actually,
well.
Onto that straight away. Right.
Good.
Lovely. Okay. We'll say bye-bye for now, but we look forward to having you in the college as soon as possible.
Okay, well, have a good day.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank
Thanks everyone.